how far has Ireland come as a country in terms and in the field of renewable energy, and what has Energia specifically contributed to this effort?
Okay, well, I think Ireland, both north and south, has actually come a long way on renewables. At the back end of the 1990s, really, it was all sort of innovation and research at that stage, and was very, very small. And a lot of people thought this renewable energy will never catch on. And at the time, there was a lot of sort of gas-fired production, and we were coming off, I suppose, oil before that. Today, so both parts of the island then set targets for 2020, and that translated to 40% renewables. So the energy produced, 40% of it would come from renewable energy by 2020. So to take the 40% targets, that translated to around about 5,500 megawatts of onshore wind by 2020. With roughly 1,300 megawatts of that in Northern Ireland and 4,300 of that in the Republic of Ireland. So in Northern Ireland, we achieved the 40% in 2018. And by now, we're actually at around about 48% on a gross capacity basis. And in the Republic of Ireland, they've just come a little bit short of the 2020 target, and they're around about 38.5%. So in terms of that, out of that 5,500 megawatts on the island, Energia as a company has 1,300 megawatts of capacity under contract, of which around about 310 megawatts are wholly owned onshore wind farms, and the rest are third-party offtake contracts from other generators who then needed to get a supplier contract, so we sell it on then to the market.
What challenges has Energia faced?
I think there's been, numerous challenges, and these challenges are as we look ahead to 2030 and beyond. These challenges are only going to get bigger. Social acceptance is a huge challenge. As we've had more wind farms in both parts of the island, there have been more issues and I suppose more opposition in various areas, and it tends to be very localized. Some areas there's no issues with, others areas there's a lot of people who who feel that wind farms can be intrusive or cause them noise issues or various things like that, and so therefore there's been a lot of planning challenges in that area. As I say, I think probably the main ones have been social acceptance and grid, the lack of grid, and I suppose just the other element of that, and we're now seeing it at the moment, where because the grid is limited, we're now seeing a lot of what we call dispatch losses, where you're either being curtailed off the system because there's too much wind power coming on the system relative to the demand at that particular point in time, and we have a lack of interconnection. We don't have enough interconnection. So that's the other piece. That's we have in Northern Ireland, we have the Moyle interconnector to Scotland, but that is constrained at certain times. You can only export a limited amount, and then there's a Wales interconnector in the Republic of Ireland. But given the volume of wind and now solar beginning to come through as well, there are times then when there is more supply than demand, and then that has to be switched down by the grid operator, and that power is essentially not being used at the moment.
Oh, okay. Well, that's actually quite
interesting. And that has grown to around about 20%. Well, so between 15 and 20%, which is in the last 12 months, that's become very significant.
Oh wow! So there's actually like issues with not enough power being used in terms of like we're producing too much.
Yeah, sure. One of the things about electricity is you can't. Traditionally we've not been able to store it. Now that's beginning to change with battery storage projects. So there's a battery, for example, at the Kilroot power station.
Yeah.
There's 100 megawatts of capacity. Now there are other projects in Energy are doing some where there's battery storage is going to allow more power to be stored and then used in in certain ways. So that's going to be part of what we need to do. But there's a whole series of challenges now to be able to use all of that power, especially as we look ahead to actually growing more renewables.
I think a wee follow-up question just for that was, I was wanting to ask what potential, like what Ireland's renewable energy potential would be, and what steps do we need to take alongside with yourselves to kind of reach that goal or the peak?
Yep. In both parts of the island, the potential is there. We have the wind resource to achieve it. And indeed, the Republic of Ireland has set themselves a target to start exporting floating offshore wind in the decade after 2030, and they're targeting 30 gigawatts to be exported to Europe. So if you take offshore wind in the Republic of Ireland, the Irish government has set a programme target of 5 gigawatts to be supplied into the island of Ireland by 2030. Now, Energia has 2 projects. We have 2 offshore projects in the Republic of Ireland, which will contribute up to 2 gigawatts of that. But then they're looking out beyond that and saying, never mind meeting the whole island's needs, let's connect this up to Europe.
How does that all? You say that exporting it to Europe and and the likes. I know you've got great connection with the Republic of Ireland and Northern Ireland, but how does that work with like Brexit?
So, okay, well, Ireland, we have a single electricity market in Ireland, so both Northern Ireland and the Republic are all part of a single island market. So all the power is essentially sold into that market at the moment. And I suppose there's not going to be any tariffs imposed on that, even with Brexit, even if there's a no-deal Brexit. Because under world trade rules, you'd still have no tariff electricity sales. But I suppose it's the Republic of Ireland that are looking at the export opportunity at the moment, into Europe, and to do that they have to build an interconnector between Ireland and France. It's called the Celtic Interconnector. And EirGrid, who are the system operator for the Republic of Ireland, they are working on this now with a view to having something in place in the second part of the 2020s.
What plans does Energia have for the future to ensure we are progressing on that steady march to being 100% renewable energy?
I mean, Energia we're an all-island utility. We have 780,000 customers. We also have 2 combined cycle gas turbine plants outside Dublin, and they are important as with the sort of remaining conventional generator because the wind. But renewable energy is by its nature intermittent, so you get a lot of it when there's a lot of wind or sun in the case of solar, and then you don't maybe have it whenever there's no wind. So then you have to have backup generation to cover that. So the market is going to have to work in future to make sure that it can cope with a much larger volume of renewables. And so by 2030, the sort of Irish government's target for 2030 is 11 gigawatts of renewable energy. And as I say, that's a milestone on the way towards net zero by 2050. It's a story that's probably not been, understood that well by the public. And I said one of the other issues was social acceptance. The problem is the more you develop renewables took generation away from kind of big sites like Kilroot or there used to be a Belfast power station or whatever, and then it put it into people's back, essentially on the hill behind their houses out in the countryside. And that's become a challenge then, because it's a change, and then the wind farms have brought community benefits with them, but they're not all. It's not all standard. It's not all the same. So it's brought about a revolution, and for us to sort of go the next mile, and when you start seeing offshore wind farms from your bedroom window, if you look, you look out or whatever, some people are not going to like that change. So I think in summary, Ireland has as an island, at around about 40% renewable consumption, is almost a world leader in terms of the challenges that presents for the grid. In terms of the volumes, it's certainly for the size of the country and the population. I would need to sort of caveat by saying that